In this lesson, we're going to be creating an FFD to make our guts look like they're sliding with the motion of the zombie. Okay, so if I scrub backwards here, you can see I finished up the animation of those guts and that skeleton, just using that one null object there. Now what I want to do is come in and start to make some of these guts almost look like they're sliding. So especially this piece back here, I feel like we could deform it in a way that kind of pushes it back this way as it begins to slide towards us, and then maybe have it kind of creep back to that starting point, almost like an inchworm. So let's get this set up. I want to first go out of my camera view, so we'll just click that to move out of that, and you can see that I ended up having to push this down below the ground just a little bit. So later, whenever we actually create our ground plane, we will make sure that we just push this down beneath the body a little bit, and that will take care of that as an issue. So let's go ahead and create our FFD. So an FFD stands for a free-form deformer, and it's going to be located with all these other deformers here underneath this purple bend button. So if I come over here, FFD is going to be this one with the little cage around it. And if we drop that in, you can see how it kind of just drops into place at that 0 point there. So what I need to do is move this backwards on the x-axis and over on the z-axis to kind of get it into place on top of the guts that I want to move. Now I'm mostly wanting to focus on this set of guts right here. That little kind of drag piece in the back that's flat against the ground. So what I'm going to do to get this into place is select my FFD, and we need to place it underneath the area that we want to deform. So if I open this up, it's going to be this small drag intestines right here. So we'll grab the FFD and bring it down and place it underneath the hierarchy for the small drag intestines. So what happens is it basically receives the offset from those intestines. So now what we need to do is kind of get this into place a little bit better, and it might be helpful for you to go into either your side or your front view like this. And now you can see, okay, if I select this, this is how far out it goes. And I want to make sure I'm only moving the FFD. So I'll kind of place that just right in the middle there. And then we can go into the Object tab of that FFD and start to make the height not quite so tall, and maybe pull back the grid size a little bit, maybe scoot this over. And then we can go into our top view. And you see kind of what we're working with here. We need to rotate this a little bit, just like that. Make sure you only are doing it on that y-axis. There we go. And we can move this over to the left a bit, maybe rotate it back just slightly to the right, only on the y-axis. And then let's go into that FFD Object tab again. And we might need just a little bit more room from side to side, just like that. There we go. And then let's take a look at it here. And it looks like it's obviously a little bit tall, so we can come in right here and squeeze that down a bit. Okay, so that looks good. Now what I want to do is go ahead and zero out or freeze the transformations of that FFD. So if you select it, go to your coordinates, hit freeze all. That is going to zero that out at this place. So if we ever need to go back to this point, that's what we want to do. Okay, so this part doesn't really require me to look at the zombie in that background. So if you want to, you can go in here and turn the background off so we don't see it at this point. And it honestly, I think it makes it a little bit easier to work with. So what I want to do now, maybe we'll push this back just a bit, then freeze that again. We need to add a few more, basically some segments in here. So if we go into our object, that's going to be your grid points. So you could add some more in the Y. That's going to add those two lines there. If you add some more, oh, excuse me, that was the X. If we go into the Y, it's going to add more in this up and down area, which really is probably too many. That's not really where I'm wanting to deform it, so we take that back down. But the Z, I definitely want to add more to, so I have those points right there. So what I want to do now is start animating the points of this FFD. If I select the FFD and I go into the points here, you'll see that I can start to grab these and move them, and it's going to deform those intestines. Now that was obviously a really extreme example, but in order to have those animations actually show up as keyframes, there is a very important button that you have to push, and that is this point level animation for recording. So if you turn this on, now anytime we move these points, it's going to be recorded. So on my first frame, I just want to start with a key as it is now. So go ahead and key that. I still have auto key on from our last lesson. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of start to scrub to a point, and we're mostly just paying attention to the rotation and the forwards animation. So if I scrub over here, looks like on frame 3 it starts to go back the other direction. So what I need to do is grab, and I'll come up here and grab my rectangle selection, grab all of these points, and it might be helpful to go into my object coordinate system instead of world in this case, and I'm going to scoot this over and down a bit, and then do the same thing for that lower level, over and down. So you can see how those stretched out over time. Just like that. Perfect. And then it starts to shift the other way. So let's find where the last frame is that it kind of finishes that slide on. Right about there. So by now, these are going to have kind of gone the other direction. And you can select points and hold shift. And you also want to make sure that on your rectangle selection, only select visible elements is unchecked. It's going to be checked on by default. So you have to make sure that that has been unchecked, or you're going to run into problems. And we'll just kind of keep working with this to move those over. And let's make sure that we get this fixed, because it looks like this is having a little bit of trouble here. We don't want to deform it too much, or you'll really start to see some weird results, kind of like what you're seeing there with this piece. Okay, so that still looks pretty good on the side. That's going to be really visible, so I'm not going to worry too much since it's so small. Okay, so you can kind of see how it stretches out and then is going to stretch back in, and then let's say in between here we'll have it stretched a little bit more even in this direction and back. Okay, that looks great. So let's watch this. You can quickly toggle back to your camera view, but just by clicking that button. And you can just deselect by kind of selecting over an empty area. So you see how it caught up until this frame 14 and then slid back over to the carcass, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now I'll move back out of camera mode so we can continue this animation. I'm going to scrub forward a little bit more. Let's see. Right about here, it's going to start going back the other direction, so kind of want to get this a little bit back more to normal. But we'll have this other side of it kind of going over to the left a bit, and maybe slightly back. So you can see how that looks like it caught, and then it's going to start moving pretty largely in this other direction here. So we can pull this back over. We're just kind of moving inverse to the movements of the carcass. Okay, perfect. And then right in between here, let's have it come over and up a bit like this. So I'm just scrubbing this to watch. And that looks pretty good, okay? And then it looks like he's going to start going the other way because now he's shifted over to the left. We'll scrub to the point where he kind of stops that movement on the right and pull this back over in the other direction. And just kind of continue alternating this back and forth and kind of pulling it backwards and stretching it as necessary. And you can see how much faster this goes when you have auto key turned on. And you don't even have to select all of them at the same time. If maybe we only want to select that one and bring it over, you have so much flexibility with this type of a deformer. So you can see how that kind of slides over there, but he's just about to start going the other way. So let's actually grab this keyframe and pull it back so he gets to that point a little bit sooner. And then about right here, it's going to go back up towards his body to kind of mimic the physics of something that's sort of elastic like that. And I'm just holding shift to select those at the same time. There we go. And then it's going to start kind of going in that other direction right over here. Backwards a little bit. This way and over to the right. You can also rotate these if you want. If you want to grab your rotation, you can start to rotate that, and that's going to give it a slightly different look to it. So in between lessons, I'm going to go in and I'll finish up with this animation, just again going kind of the opposite direction of the way that he's turning. So if he turns to the right, these pieces are going to be kind of sliding to the left because that's where he came from. So just to kind of finish that up, you can work on that in between lessons. Make sure you have your point level animation button enabled to record those keyframes, and we'll come back in the next lesson and this FFD animation will be done. But we'll be adding another FFD to get a little more practice to deform this heart as well. So the heart will kind of get some of that friction and slide on its animation as well. So if you don't get enough practice just from this little part here, we'll be doing some more freeform deformer in the next lesson.